As a skilled spiritual medicine master, Jason's spiritual consciousness has long been paying attention to every detail of the other party. Any subtle physical changes of the other party are clearly observed by Jason. The invisible ripples transformed by the soul shock struck the spiritual master like lightning, and an invisible transparent shield suddenly emerged from the spiritual master's body, blocking Jason's soul shock from the outside. Oops! Jason's face changed in vain. The opponent had a spiritual weapon with a mental immunity, so soul shock was useless to the opponent. Haha, the masked man roared, his eyes as sharp as blades, and the long sword in his hand slashed at Jason's head like a meteor hitting the moon. Gravity space. As he retreated, the powerful spiritual power in Jason's body instantly entered the gravity pendant on his wrist. Within 2 meters of Jason's body, the gravity of space suddenly increased to 100 times the gravity. The masked man only felt that the sword in his hand was suddenly strengthened with great force. For a moment, it was difficult to grasp it flexibly, and he lost control. The tip of the sword barely scraped against Jason's chest and slid down, leaving a long scar on Jason's body. Bang! Jason punched back and hit the opponent's chest hard. Jason's level was not high, but his physical power was extremely powerful after taking the violent spiritual route. This punch hit the opponent directly. Boom flew out. Immediately, a bottle of spiritual potion exploded out of Jason's body and turned into a meteor, flying towards the repelled masked man. The sword light circulated, and the bottle of spiritual potion was instantly chopped into pieces by the masked man. But at the moment when the potion bottle shattered, a large amount of dark green fishy liquid turned into countless mist and enveloped the masked man. Poison? The masked man exclaimed, but he didn't panic at all. He forced himself to stay in shape, and then the sword light surged, the body rotated, the sword light wrapped around the body, and the figure disappeared in an instant, as if dancing. A big silver ball, all over the body, airtight. All the mist that originally filled the sky was blocked by the long sword, and not a drop was sprinkled on the masked man. It was truly watertight and could not be splashed with water. Jason turned around and flashed toward the outside of the alley. It was broad daylight now, and Colton was in the royal city of King Orlando. There were so many people walking outside. As long as he was noticed by the city guards, even if the other party was a sect spiritual master, he was determined not to get any favors, and the target he wanted to kill was him. The masked man's subconscious reaction was definitely to chase him instead of killing Wayne, who could also save Wayne's life. Sure enough, as Jason expected, the masked man jumped up and down, his steps were on Lotus, and he slashed down with the long sword in his hand, about to use his sword light on Jason again. A scene that surprised the masked man appeared. Under his slash, the long sword originally made of hundreds of refined steel suddenly shattered like fragile tofu, leaving only a hilt in his hand. Immediately, a large amount of white smoke emerged from the fragments of the broken stainless steel sword, making a rustling sound. The dark green stinky venom from before was actually so poisonous. Seeking death, the masked man couldn't help but became furious, and at the same time he was also a little shocked. The long sword in his hand was not an ordinary stainless steel sword. It also had some spiritual runes loaded on it. It was an extremely rare item. The spiritual weapon was instantly corroded by Jason's poison. What was that dark green poison just now? If it gets on his body, the masked man can no longer imagine the consequences. A sharp sound breaks through the air, and the masked man's feet spurt out spiritual power, instantly turning into a black afterimage, and the lightning-like force heading towards Jason's location. He was so fast that he was behind Jason in just a few ups and downs. His right palm flipped over, and his spiritual power was surging, suppressing it like a giant mountain. Thick earth seal. Powerful momentum gathered from all directions. In Jason's spiritual consciousness, the spiritual power in the heaven and earth above his head instantly became extremely violent, and the palm of the masked man seemed to have truly turned into a towering tower at this moment. The mountains fell from the sky and were irresistible. After procrastinating for too much time, the masked man no longer wanted to be entangled. Fatal blow. Jason, who was running fast, suddenly stood firm. The boiling spiritual power in his body suddenly reached its peak. He shouted loudly in his mouth. His right fist instantly turned into a pillar reaching the sky, and his entire arm became thicker in an instant. He made a circle, stretched his clothes tightly, and met the masked man's right palm, which was about to turn the opponent into a towering mountain and rise to the sky. Boom! The sky collapsed and the earth shook. Jason's robe shattered in an instant. The rocky ground beneath his feet cracked, and a huge pit appeared, with smoke and dust flying. Jason spurted out a mouthful of blood. The powerful spiritual power instantly crushed the meridians in his right arm to pieces. The entire right arm burst open. The taut skin burst open like cloth, and countless blood arrows shot out of the gap. Sprayed out. But the masked man was not feeling well either. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, his palms were in severe pain, his meridians were damaged, and his right arm also lost its fighting power. A trace of surprise flashed in the masked man's eyes as Jason was able to withstand his own palm. Death. The masked man's ferocious eyes were full of murderous intent, and his powerful spiritual power gathered again, and he punched Jason in the chest. Aha! Jason's feet were already numb and dripping with blood from the previous blow. A trace of madness flashed in Jason's eyes as he couldn't dodge. Regardless of the opponent's attack, he also hit the opponent with his left fist. In such a situation, what Jason can fight against is his strong body. Both of them did not dodge or evade, and forcefully withstood the opponent's punch. Pung! Pung! There were bursts of skeletal explosions, and Jason's chest collapsed under the opponent's blow. Several sternum bones were broken, and the masked man didn't feel well either. The bones of the chest also shattered. Blood spurted out from Jason's mouth in large mouthfuls. His whole body was covered in blood, and no part of him was uninjured. Even breathing was extremely difficult. Ahem. The masked man also coughed up several mouthfuls of blood, but compared to Jason, it was obviously much better. This kid, the masked man, was shocked. When he received the order to assassinate Jason, he carefully studied Jason's information. After learning that Jason was only at the level of a spiritual master, as a sect he didn't look down on the spiritual master at all. He brought 2 heavenly spiritual masters with him. In order to restrain Jason, he even wore a spiritual weapon that could exempt most spiritual attacks. But he didn't expect that now, not only 2 of his men were dead, but he himself was also seriously injured. Fortunately, there was a smile on the masked man's face. Although he was also seriously injured, he at least completed the task. You are very good. You are so strong at a young age. You are a talented person. But it is a pity that a genius like you will die in my hands today, haha. The masked man stepped forward and penetrated his legs deeply. In the street, in front of Jason, who could barely open his eyes, he roared triumphantly. At this moment, Jason could no longer speak any words. He was just spitting out blood. Just when Jason's consciousness was almost dissipated, a strange force suddenly emerged from Jason's body. The force appeared so suddenly that there was no trace at all. As soon as this power appeared, it began to circulate in Jason's body. Wherever it went, all the damaged meridians, muscles, and bones in Jason's body were healed quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed was so fast that it was almost appalling. Ah, murder! At this moment, a passerby suddenly walked through the alley. After seeing the bloody scene in the alley, he ran away and screamed. Humph! The masked man glanced at the passerby indifferently. After brewing for a long time, he unleashed a spiritual riot with his right fist and struck hard at Jason, who was unable to move. Bang! Jason, who couldn't move, was hit hard. But what surprised Jason was that just like when he was whipped in the torture room of the Talon City prosecutor's office, The other party's attack not only failed to his own body was damaged, but the spiritual power consumed by the previous battle surged up in his body, and there was actually a slight increase. Moreover, his injured body also healed because of the opponent's previous blow. It's faster. Mission accomplished. The masked man exhaled a long breath, clapped his hands, turned around and left. Today's mission was originally thought to be quite simple, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult, which made the masked man feel helpless. But fortunately, it was finally completed. It took me so long to kill a guy at the level of a spiritual master. It was really unbelievable. Where are you going? Suddenly, a hoarse voice came from behind the masked man. The masked man was extremely surprised. He turned around hurriedly, only to see Jason, who had been knocked away by him and was covered in blood, stood up unsteadily in front of him. There was an expression of disbelief on the masked man's face. He clearly knew how powerful his previous blow was, let alone a seriously injured spiritual master. A high-level spiritual master should have died a long time ago, but this could be because he was injured and therefore did not use his strength. The masked man was confused, and now I'm afraid this is the only explanation. Haha, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. You were fine pretending to be dead before, but you still dared to stand up, which almost caused me to fail to complete the task, the masked man sneered, and with a flash of his body, the spiritual energy in his body gathered crazily again, gathered on his left fist, and struck out suddenly. Bang! A huge gunshot sound came, and Jason was once again blown away by this blow. Boom! Jason's whole body was hit hard against a wall nearby. The entire wall collapsed under such a huge bombardment, and countless smoke and dust filled the air, drowning Jason's figure. Ah, it feels so good. Jason, who fell into the dust and rubble, felt that countless pores in his body were relaxed by this blow. The spiritual power in his body increased again, and the injuries on his body healed. The speed accelerated again. Haha! The masked man laughed wildly. Before he could finish laughing, he heard the sound of overturning rubble coming from the smoke-filled place. Jason, who had fallen earlier, actually recovered from the rubble again. Sue stood up. How is this possible? The masked man's face was full of shock. What the hell, is this guy still a spiritual master? Why can't he be beaten to death? No, you brat, I want you to die. The masked man roared and shouted again. His figure suddenly grew, and his left fist hit Jason desperately. At the same time, his legs swung around, kicking him in turn like a big windmill. On Jason, countless spiritual powers stirred in the air, making violent puffing sounds. He didn't know how many times he kicked, but the masked man felt that the spiritual power in his body was almost exhausted, and then he panted and stopped attacking. Hoo-hoo! The masked man was breathing heavily, his forehead was covered with sweat, and his legs were shaking slightly. The previous continuous attacks almost made him lose strength, but he believed that under his previous crazy attacks, the young man was definitely dead. Huang Quan, with his strength, even if a spiritual master stood there and let him attack, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Ha ha ha, brat, you are still arrogant. If you have the ability, stand up and let me see. Ha ha ha, the masked man roared, laughing up to the sky with great comfort, but at the next moment, the laughter stopped abruptly. In the big pit in the middle of the smoke-filled street, Jason stood up with a relaxed look on his face, shook his neck with a loud bang, and there was a crisp sound of bone collision. At this moment, Jason felt that his whole body was full of strength because of the crazy blows from the masked man. The spiritual energy in his body was constantly surging, and it was actually much more abundant than before the battle. Moreover, the injuries on his body had already healed at this time. He was so old that even the broken bones in his body were firmly joined together. Although there were still cracks on them, they were no longer a serious problem. At this time, the masked man was completely shocked and speechless. His eyes were wide open, full of fear, as if he had seen a ghost. It's my turn this time. Jason shook his right fist, and his figure instantly turned into an afterimage. In a flash, he came to the masked man and punched the masked man on the injured chest. The weird power in Jason's body suddenly branched out at this moment, following the spiritual power from Jason's right fist and entering the masked man's body. A scene that surprised Jason happened. The moment the strange force entered the masked man's body, the masked man suddenly expanded rapidly and turned into a huge meat ball in an instant, and then exploded with a bang. It opened and turned into blood and minced meat all over the floor. Jason was stunned to the ground. Before he could recover from his daze, the strange power in his body had disappeared and was no longer seen. Where does this weird power come from? Jason was deeply shocked. The other party is a real strong spiritual master, but under the bombardment of this weird power, the whole thing was reduced to pieces. This requires how much power? Even his father's 6th-level meridian barrier is extremely vulnerable to this weird power. If he can master this weird power, Jason was shocked and determined that he would find out. The belief in the source of this strange power. The strong smell of blood filled the alley, and Jason suddenly remembered that he had just escaped an assassination. Worried about Wayne, he quickly came to Wayne and saw that Wayne was only dead due to excessive blood loss. After passing out, he breathed a long sigh of relief. Who wants to kill me? A question quickly emerged in Jason's mind. Today's assassination was obviously aimed at him. Until now, he had not offended many people, but he could mobilize the sect spirit. There are very few master-level masters who come to assassinate him. In a kingdom like Orlando, a sect spirit master-level master is already extremely powerful. Jason quickly checked the 2 heavenly spirits. No special marks or things were found on the master's body, but it was unexpectedly discovered that the first celestial spirit master did not die under his attack, but just passed out like Wayne. A smile appeared on Jason's face, as long as the other party was not dead. As an elixir master, he had countless ways to make the other party spit out what he wanted to know, even if the other party was a dead soldier. Whoa, whoa, whoosh! At this moment, there was a burst of rapid footsteps outside the alley, and then a group of armored guards, led by one person, rushed in quickly with weapons in hand. "Sir, this is right here." A middle-aged man pointed over. It was the passerby who discovered what was going on here. After seeing the bloody appearance in the alley, the faces of this group of soldiers changed, and they immediately surrounded Jason nervously. "You came just in time." Jason nodded after seeing this group of soldiers. "I am Jason from the Todd family. Someone wanted to assassinate me just now. This is my companion. He was seriously injured. Take him quickly. Get some treatment." The Todd family? The leader was a middle-aged man wearing silver-white armor. After hearing that Jason was protecting his family, he was stunned for a moment, then a strange smile appeared on his face and he shouted, "Get it for me. What do you want to do?" "I am Jason from the Todd family of the kingdom's martial arts family, and I am the victim." Looking at the soldiers who quickly rushed up and roughly cuffed him with chains, Jason was a little confused, and his face immediately darkened. "The Wushuan family, the Todd family?" The middle-aged man sneered, "I have never heard of the Wushuan family in our kingdom, the Todd family. I only know that there is only one Wushuan family in the kingdom, and that is the Radigan family. Now I suspect that you are suspected of killing people in the royal city. Come with me to the security station." Jason finally understood the reason. It seemed that this middle-aged man was from the Radigan family. When he heard himself say, "She is the queen of the Todd family, so she wants to take care of herself." In the kingdom of Orlando, the Radigan family is a rising star, and they have always been at odds with the Todd family. This is what the former Lecent wanted to see. If he wanted a stable kingdom, it would be far better for 2 families to restrain each other than to have one martial family with great power. "Let me go." Jason took a step forward and said coldly to the middle-aged man. He didn't care what family he belonged to, but he couldn't use himself as a tool. Back off, back off. If you dare to resist again, I will kill you." Jason's move frightened a large group of people on the other side to scream and pointed their weapons at Jason, their faces full of nervousness. The dilapidated appearance in the alley showed the intensity of the previous battle. The one who could stand to the end was definitely the strongest person in the alley. Facing such a villain, how could they, a group of spiritual warrior-level security forces, not be nervous? Although they believed that this young man would not dare to take action in the royal city, they were still unavoidably frightened in their hearts. "Sir, these two people are still alive." At this moment, a soldier said loudly after checking Wayne and the two heavenly spirit masters who fell on the ground. "Cuff these two guys first, and then take them back to the police station for medical treatment." The middle-aged man looked at Jason nervously and ordered at the same time. "Humph, as the chief of the Royal City Public Security Station, I am responsible for the safety of the Royal City. If you dare to resist, you will endanger the security of the kingdom." The middle-aged man shouted loudly with a stern expression. He is a third-level senior spiritual master. He can feel the terrifying aura coming from Jason. Although he is afraid, at this point, he cannot be allowed to change his words, otherwise there will be news of Ratigan in the royal city. The family is afraid of rumors about the Todd family, which is something he can't afford. "Okay, very good." A cold smile appeared on Jason's face. "Since you want to take me back, then I will go with you. I want to see what kind of place this police station is." What a powerful place. Since Wayne will be fine, Jason doesn't bother to talk to him anymore. If he really wants to take action, Jason can sweep away more than a dozen spirit master-level soldiers here, but it is inevitable that innocent people will be hurt. Since the other party wants to ask me to leave, then I will leave alone. However, if I want to get out by then, it may not be that easy. As a member of the Ratigan family and the captain of the police station, Chloe saw Jason quietly letting two police station soldiers handcuff him without resisting. His heart suddenly relaxed, and then a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Give it, let the security office handle the case, stay away from the rest." After Chloe arranged for a few soldiers to guard the scene, she immediately led Jason and Wayne out of the alley. At this moment, a large number of spectators had been attracted outside the alley because of the running of the security station soldiers earlier. After seeing the mess in the alley and the bloody scene, many people looked at the victims with shock. Jason in handcuffs. What happened here? At this moment, a few more soldiers wearing city guard armor suddenly crowded in outside the alley. The leader was a young man in his 20s, who was escorted away by the security guard. After seeing Jason, the young man was stunned for a moment, then quickly ran to Chloe and others. "Jason, is it really you?" After taking a closer look at Jason, the young man had a look of astonishment on his face, and then he cupped his hands and said to Chloe, "Miss Chloe, this Jason is ours. People from the Todd family don't know what he has committed, so why not hand him over to our city guards?" Jason looked curiously at the young man who stopped in front of him and called out his name. He looked familiar, as if he had seen it in his family before, but Jason didn't know his name. Jason was quite surprised to be able to rush forward for him. Looking at the young man standing in front of him, Chloe couldn't help but sneer, "Leave it to you, haha, Kira, aren't you out of your mind?" This man was suspected of killing someone in the royal city during a special period, which caused a problem to the security of the royal city. The extremely bad influence has been investigated by our security department. If you city guards want to arrest people, let your commander Abel come over. Why are you, a small captain of the city guards, joining in the fun? Just go about your promising patrol and get out of here. Kira showed a hint of anger on her face and said sternly, "Chloe, do you want to provoke a fight between the two families? Is there a dispute? Let me release the Todd family immediately." "'Cause a dispute between the two families? Haha." Chloe couldn't help but laugh. "Kira, you are just a trustee. He's just a collateral descendant of the De family. He is nothing in the Todd family. There is also this guy named Jason, right? I have never heard of this person in the Todd family." He is not the same as you. You're a declining branch, please get out of my way while I'm in a good mood. If you get in the way again, don't think it's important that you are a city guard. I'll take you away together with you for obstructing official duties. Chloe looked extremely worried. Arrogant, as a direct descendant of the Radigan family, he is also considered the #1 figure in the Radigan family. If the opponent is a direct descendant of the Todd family, such as Kelly, Dick, Grayson, etc., Chloe has to take care of Todd. The family's reputation was important, but Chloe didn't pay attention to collateral children like Kira and Jason, whose name he had never heard of. Capture it back and ask the Todd family to come and bring it up again, just to slap the Todd family in the face, and you can also show your face among the top leaders of the family. This is the overall plan in Chloe's mind. It is purely what Chloe wants. She wanted to show her presence in front of the family and stepped on the Todd family, the family's rival family. It wasn't that Chloe wanted to make a fuss about Jason or frame Jason. In fact, as a struggle between the old and new forces in the Wushuan family in the royal city, any collision would affect the vision and interests of many nobles in the royal city. It was not something that he, a direct descendant of the Radigan family, could easily provoke. However, what Chloe didn't know at this moment was that the Jason he thought he had brought back was just a little-known minor role in the Todd family, but he was actually a sleeping lion. Kira's face was livid with anger. She looked at Chloe walking arrogantly in front of her, but she didn't make the slightest move. Chloe is right. In terms of status, Chloe is a direct descendant of the Radigan family, but she is a collateral line of the Todd family. In terms of status, the other party is the captain of the Royal City Police Station, with dozens of people under his command, but he is only a small captain of the City Guard Army, with only 5 people under his command. In terms of strength, Chloe is a 3rd-level senior spiritual master, and he is only a 2nd-level senior spiritual master. If a conflict really breaks out, Chloe will definitely arrest herself and others without any hesitation. Captain, what should we do now? Several city guards under Kira also came to Kira's side at this time, looking at the backs of Chloe and others, and asked in a low voice. What should we do? Let's go to the commander first. Kira frowned, turned around and walked quickly towards the headquarters of the city guard, leaving several of his men behind. Kira knew in his heart that the Public Security Bureau and the city guards both had the right to manage the security of the royal city, but the Public Security Bureau focused more on handling some civil and criminal cases in the royal city, while the city guards protected the safety of the royal city. In this matter, the sheriff's arresting Jason was not considered an overstep of its authority. But Kira knew Jason's identity clearly. When Jason defeated Kelly, Kira was also a member of the crowd in the audience. Sun was so impressed that he could recognize it at a glance. The fact that Master Rudolph of the Kingdom, His Royal Highness the Grand Prince and others came to congratulate Jason during the family clan meeting also spread a lot in the Todd family. In Kira's mind, Jason is a prominent figure in the family and a star-like existence in the family, and Kira herself admires this boy who is much younger than herself, but has extraordinary strength. We must not let Jason, a member of the family, be bullied in the police station. Absolutely not. Kira pursed her lips, eyes firm, and ran quickly on the streets of the royal city. The strength of the senior spiritual warrior was fully demonstrated at this moment. The headquarters of the city guards was not far from here. In a short time, Kira arrived at the entrance of the headquarters. Anxiously, he rushed directly to the commander's office without stopping. If an ordinary city guard team leader broke in like this, he would have been stopped by the guards long ago, but the guards in the headquarters also knew that Kira was a descendant of the Todd family, and the commander of the city guard was Todd, Earl Abel of the family, so when he saw Kira in a hurry, no one stopped him. Lord Abel, a member of the family, was taken away by Chloe, the captain of the security station, the Radigan family. After reporting the emergency, Kira walked into the commander's office and saw Abel's businessman. After a salute, he immediately spoke anxiously. Abel suddenly stood up and frowned. Speak slowly, what exactly is going on? That's what happened. Kira immediately told him everything he knew about the situation. Report to Abel. Jason? Abel, who stood up in a hurry, suddenly showed an inexplicable smile on his nervous face after hearing Kira say that Jason was taken away. Slowly, sat down. Okay, I know this, go down. After listening to what Kira said, Abel did not any expression was just a wave of his hand to Kira, beckoning him to go out. This Jason has always been rampant in the family. I'm afraid he didn't expect that he would be today. Let him be taught a lesson by the Radigan family. Let me protect him. Dream. Abel sneered in his heart. He was full of complaints about Jason and Reno and his son. How could Abel, who wished that something had happened to them, save Jason? Lord Abel, this Jason is from our family. Weak, seeing that Abel just waved his hand to indicate that he knew, and did not make any other movements, Kira, who had been expecting so much, was stunned. Living. So what if he belongs to our family? I have my own sense of propriety. Do I need you to teach me? Seeing that Kira did not go out, but instead questioned his decision, Abel couldn't help but frowned and said, Why? Are you still okay? Come out if you have nothing. Yes, sir. Kira stood up carefully and walked out of Abel's room. Kira, who is a descendant of a collateral line, has heard before that the line of Elder Claude and the line of Chief Leo in the family are not very harmonious and often compete with each other. As a descendant of a side line, Kira just does his duty and does his best. I didn't take it to heart. In Kira's heart, regardless of whether he is the Renault clan leader or the Claude elder, even if they have conflicts, they are still members of the family, and they will definitely deal with the problem unanimously. Therefore, after discovering that Jason was taken away by the Radigan family, the first thing that comes to mind is his boss Abel. But at this moment, Kira was completely disappointed with Abel. No, we must not let the children of the family be wronged by the Radigan family. It seems that the only choice is to go back to the family for help. Kira was thinking in his heart. When he walked out of the city guard headquarters, his eyes suddenly lit up and he walked quickly towards the family mansion. Run. Not to mention Kira running around for Jason, under the leadership of Chloe, Jason was quickly taken to the security station. Jason was then locked in a separate interrogation room by Chloe in a separate interrogation room at the police station. After arranging for 2 people to watch him, Chloe himself came to the office door of Count Eastman, the director of the public security station. Hey, Kelfield, why are you here? What kind of wind brought you here, haha? As soon as Chloe entered the door, she saw Kelfield, the son of the Batad patriarch, also in the office, immediately smiled. Haha, of course I'm here to see my dear Uncle Eastman, and by the way, I'm also here to see my dear brother Chloe. Kelfield also laughed after seeing Chloe. Director Eastman, who knew that Chloe was out to handle the case, raised his head and asked, casually, Chloe, how are you doing? Nothing's wrong. Second Uncle Eastman, nothing's wrong. He's a boy from the Todd family. It seemed that he had been assassinated by someone else. 2 people died at the scene, and an assassin and a guard from the Todd family were injured. They have now been treated by doctors from the public security station. As for the boy from the Todd family, there is nothing wrong with him, but he has been treated. I brought it back and waited for the Todd family to come and ask for someone. Chloe said lightly. Eastman couldn't help but frown slightly. The boy from the Todd family? He was assassinated. Who was it? If it was an ordinary fight or something, Chloe would bring the other person back casually, and then let the Todd family. It's okay to come to redeem people, but the assassination incident is no small matter. If the assassin's target is the direct descendants of the Todd family, one of the 3 major families in the kingdom, will definitely be extremely furious, and they will bring them to the rescue. If he comes back, it may not be very appropriate, but it will bring trouble to the family. Although there has always been a conflict between his family and the Todd family, it is just a game between the upper class, and Eastman also knows that His Majesty the Kingdom's Lieutenant is also happy to see the 2 families hate each other. If it is true, because of his actions, the Todd family was completely offended, but now was not the time. It's a boy named Jason. He said he is from the Todd family, but I have never heard of this name in the Todd family. But on the way, I met Kira from the Todd family and knew that the boy, I guess he is from the Todd family, he should be the little-known collateral descendant. Yeah. Eastman nodded slowly. If he was just a collateral descendant, then it would be nothing. Big deal. What, Jason? Brother Chloe, are you sure that boy from the Todd family is named Jason? Kelfield, who was listening quietly to Chloe's words, stood up at this moment. Chloe looked at the excited Kelfield in surprise, and asked doubtfully, "It's called Jason, what?" Kelfield, do you know that kid? Haha, brother Chloe, he is so awesome. Thanks. Kelfield laughed suddenly, with a ferocious smile on his face. Not only do we know each other, I have wanted to find Jason for a long time. Now it's better. I didn't expect that brother Chloe would take him back to the security department. Come on, haha, let's go and see that Jason, haha, ha ha ha. Kelfield laughed with great excitement, but couldn't help but mutter in his heart, this damn Jason, last time I offended Master Rudolph on the street, and was scolded by my father again when I went back. It will depend on how I deal with him. After being taken into the interrogation room of the police station, Jason was not idle, thinking about the other party, while repairing the remaining injuries on his body. The weird power generated in his body is extremely strange and has extremely powerful healing power. The more he is attacked by others, the faster the injuries in his body recover, and the more spiritual strength he has in his body can be increased. Even Jason, who has 3,000 years of knowledge beyond this world, has never heard of such a weird power on this continent. After such a long time, the spiritual potions that Jason had taken earlier were gradually losing their effectiveness. He was almost on the verge of breaking through the third level of high-level spiritual power, but in an instant he fell back to the low level of the third level, faintly heading towards the third level. Intermediate level approach. After a previous battle, Jason, who had taken the 6th level spiritual master potion, suddenly broke through from the 2nd level high-level spiritual warrior to the 3rd level low-level spiritual warrior, faintly approaching the 3rd level intermediate level, but there was no joy on Jason's face. No matter who wants his life, he will not let him live in this world again. Jason's face showed a look of confidence that looked down on the world, and his eyes showed a strong murderous intent. Bang! At this moment, there was a burst of hurried footsteps outside the door of the interrogation room, and then 2 soldiers from the public security station standing at the door echoed, and the door of the entire interrogation room was heavily slammed. Kicked away. What caught Jason's eyes was a young man with a ferocious smile on his face. It was Kelfield, who he had met Grayson on the street before. Behind him were 2 broad-shouldered and muscular guards, with a menacing look shining in his brows. Chloe and several soldiers from the public security station also walked in behind Kelfield. Jason, we meet again, stay safe. Kelfield looked at Jason with a ferocious face, as if he wanted to swallow Jason in one bite. Seeing Kelfield walking in, Jason's face showed no expression at all. He just frowned slightly and then lowered his head. Damn it, you are still such a naughty boy here. Last time I let you escape on the street, which made me embarrassed in front of Master Rudolph and scolded by my father. But this time I am not so lucky. With a sinister smile on his face, Kelfield ordered the 2 guards behind him, give him a good greeting. I will make sure that he won't even dare to fart when he sees him in the future. How dare you? Jason raised his head suddenly, a flash of lightning shot out from his piercing eyes, and looked at the 2 guards walking towards him. Under the pressure of Jason's eyes, the 2 guards, who were originally aggressive and eager to move forward, could not help but pause. They were actually suppressed by Jason's eyes and did not dare to take another half-step forward. Trash, who told you to stop? Kelfield couldn't help but cursed when he saw this situation. The 2 guards came to their senses in an instant. Seeing the furious young master behind them, they thought that they were so frightened by the young man in front of them that they dared not move. If this embarrassing incident were to spread, what would happen to them in the future? Hanging out with the Radigan family. The two people were extremely embarrassed and angry. They roared angrily and punched Jason hard in the chest. Bang! A huge impact came, and the metal chair under Jason's butt made an unpleasant squeaking sound. However, Jason's body sitting there remained motionless, looking up at the attacker. There was a look of contempt in the eyes of the guard who was beating him, as if he was looking at not a person but a bug. "You brat is looking for death." The two guards couldn't bear it anymore. Jason's eyes made them completely angry. They had restrained themselves because Jason was a member of the Todd family. At this moment, the third-level spiritual power in their bodies began to circulate rapidly. He stood up and hit Jason's chest hard with his steel-like fists. Bang bang bang. Although Jason's physical fitness has reached the level of a spiritual master, and the third-level spiritual power in his body has been protected around his body, under the constant hammering of two third-level senior spiritual masters, waves of severe pain suddenly spread from Jason's chest throughout his body like fire. But Jason didn't even hum. He kept looking at the two guards in front of him with cold eyes, releasing undisguised murderous intent. "You two are dead." Jason snorted from his nose. The two guards, who were pretending to be tough but with stern looks, finally retreated under Jason's naked murderous gaze, and a cold sweat of fear fell from their foreheads. After all, the other party is also a child of the Todd family, and I am just two guards of the Radigan family. Although it is said that they are under the orders of Master Kelfield, if something really happens, I will be the one to take the blame. Fuck, get out of here. Seeing the cowardice of his guard, Kelfield, who was standing in front of Jason, cursed angrily. He flew up and kicked Jason hard on the chest. As the deputy minister of the kingdom's headquarters and the son of Bastard, the patriarch of the Radigan family, Kelfield defeated the two sons of Leo Patriarch, Dick and Grayson, in a fight a few days ago. He is not a person who only knows how to a wasteful playboy whose strength has reached the level of a senior spiritual master. This blow was not like the previous two guards with spare hands, but a full blow. The raging spiritual power hit Jason's chest heavily. Jason felt his chest was tumbling like an ocean. His throat felt sweet, and a fishy-smelling liquid suddenly surged up. Jason's face turned pale. A trace of blood was clearly visible at the corner of his mouth. Jason grinned, holding back the sharp pain in his chest. His eyes shot out with a menacing light, staring coldly at Kelfield in front of him, gritted his teeth and said, "Come on, beat me to death if you dare. Otherwise, you will definitely regret it." Kelfield disagreed. His whole person was full of excitement, as if he was staring at Jason, who was glaring at him fiercely. His legs spread from left to right, and he kicked Jason's chest repeatedly, laughing. He said, "Damn it. You want to take revenge, you don't know how to live or die, but it depends on whether you have the life to leave here. A branch of the Todd family, so what if you play well with Grayson? He will die, and there will be no big waves." Huge clanging sounds continued to sound in the interrogation room, and the strong momentum pulled Jason, who had his hands handcuffed to the iron pillars on both sides of the interrogation chair, back. Dazzling bloodstains suddenly appeared on his hands that were handcuffed tightly. Big beads of sweat kept pouring out from Jason's forehead. He held his hands tightly, and it didn't hurt even if his nails dug into his skin. Angry light shot out from his eyes, and he staring at Kelfield angrily, like an angry lion. He roared loudly, "Come on. Fight again. If you dare, beat me to death, otherwise you are a son of a bitch. Damn it, boy, you are looking for death." Kelfield was completely angered by Jason. The anger in his body was like burning gasoline, burning in an instant. His whole body jumped up and hit Jason's chest heavily. He kicked a few times and roared, hit me hard, until this kid calls out for mercy. I'm responsible for beating him to death." Chloe, who had been watching from behind, suddenly stepped forward and stopped angry. Kelfield, who was hit, said, "That's enough, Kelfield, if you hit me again, you will really be killed." At the same time, he used his eyes to stop the guard who wanted to step forward after receiving the order. No matter how Jason is a descendant of the Todd family, he is still a member of the Todd family. If something happens here, it is definitely not something he can bear. This level of slap in the face will definitely trigger the Todd family. The conflict with the Radigan family broke out, which was not what Chloe wanted to see. Yes, it won't be fun if you beat him to death. Master, I have plenty of time to play with you slowly. Kelfield, who was originally extremely angry, suddenly became quiet after being pulled by Chloe, and then he suddenly showed a ferocious smile to Jason. Didn't this kid have a guard brought back? Bring him over to me immediately. Kelfield, the guard and the assassin were seriously injured. Now I'm receiving treatment. Chloe was stunned for a moment, then thought of what Kelfield was going to do, and said immediately. Receive treatment? What kind of treatment? Does a dead person need to receive treatment? A very sinister smile appeared on Kelfield's face. Bring him here immediately. I won't kill Jason, but I want him to see the guard who bravely saved him in front of the assassin die in front of him. Oh, what a heartbreaking thing it will be, ha ha ha. Kelfield laughed extremely arrogantly. Stand up. How dare you, Kelpid? Jason's eyes suddenly widened when he heard what Kelpid said, and he roared with great anger. Jason was just curious about Wayne at first, but after learning that he was indeed a cursed emperor spiritualist, Jason simply wanted to try to lift his curse of hatred, and had no intention of recruiting him. But when he was assassinated previously, Wayne stood in front of him without hesitation when faced with the sword light released by a spiritual master, making Jason truly regard Wayne as his friend in his heart. If Jason could tolerate Kelfield's actions before, now Kelfield wants to deal with his companions, but Jason can't bear it at all. Haha. Seeing Jason's angry look, Kelfield laughed with great joy, and said ferociously to Chloe beside him, Brother Chloe, where is the guard now? Get it to me right away. Bring it over, haha, I want to do it myself. Oh. Chloe sighed helplessly in her heart. Jason couldn't let Kelpid kill him at will. The guard had to be unlucky, a member of the Todd family. The guard is not a person at all, so let him be. Thinking of this, Chloe immediately ordered the police station soldiers around her to bring Wayne, who was being treated in the police station, to the interrogation room. In a short time, Wayne was escorted over by 2 soldiers from the public security station with their arms crossed. The only injury Wayne suffered was the single blow from the sword of the spiritual master of the sect. Although he had the body of an 8th-level emperor spiritual master and had no strength at all, his powerful body only broke 2 of his sternums. A huge gash was opened in his chest, and he lost a lot of blood and passed out. Under the treatment of the police station doctor, Wayne's sternum was reattached, the wound was bandaged, the bleeding stopped, and he regained consciousness. Before he could figure out his situation, he was taken to the interrogation room by 2 soldiers who suddenly broke in. Jason, what is this? Looking at the crowd of people in the interrogation room and Jason handcuffed on the interrogation chair, Wayne couldn't help but be filled with doubts. Could it be that he and Jason were captured by assassins? It's over, I'm afraid this time it's going to be more bad. Before Wayne could think much, Kelfield punched Wayne hard in the abdomen. Wayne, who was being held by 2 soldiers, suddenly curled up like a shrimp, and was elbowed by Kelfield again. It hit the chest that had just been bandaged. Pfft. A mouthful of blood immediately spurted out of Wayne's mouth, and the wound that had been bandaged to stop the bleeding broke open again. Blood seeped out of the white gauze, dyeing the white gauze red. Kelfield! Jason let out an angry roar. Looking at Kelfield, his eyes turned red instantly, and the spiritual energy in his body surged like a flood that broke a bank. Fatal blow! Jason roared angrily. He raised his hand suddenly, and a huge amount of spiritual power burst out from Jason's body. The handcuffs tightly cuffed on Jason's hands actually fell under Jason's huge strength, gradually twisted and deformed, and a trace of cracks appeared. However, Jason's hands and wrists also broke under the huge force, and blood flowed. Jason, what do you want to do? Do you want to resist arrest? Seeing Jason's actions, Chloe immediately shouted angrily and shouted to the two soldiers next to her, "Why don't you two hurry up and get rid of me?" He held it down and changed it to a larger shackle. The two soldiers rushed forward. Hoo-hoo! At the door of the Todd family, a young boy running quickly ran over from a distance, panting. Without even bothering to talk to the guard standing at the door, he rushed into the family mansion in a hurry. Isn't this Master Kira? What happened in running away in such a hurry? The two guards at the door looked curiously at Kira, who rushed in, with doubts on their faces. Kira, who rushed into the family mansion, immediately arrived outside the courtyard of Chief Leo, and was immediately stopped by two guards. As the chief of the family, Leo is not someone who can just break in. My name is Kira, and I am a member of the family. If I have something urgent to do, please go to Chief Leo and ask the two eldest brothers to inform me. Kira stood at the door of the courtyard and said anxiously. You wait here. The guard glanced at Kira and informed him. After a moment, the guard came out and said, Follow me. When Kira walked into the hall, he was talking to Renaud about something in his living room, and both of them had smiles on their faces at the moment. Since Renaud was promoted to a low-level Imperial Spiritual Master, Renaud has been in a happy mood these days. Rost also approached Renaud and wanted to take back Renaud's villa and give it to Renaud again, but Renaud flatly refused. In some matters concerning the family, Rost, who had been silent at first, openly supported Leo. With Rost's support, no one would dare to resist Leo, the patriarch, no matter what he decided. In order to keep Renaud's heart, Rost also tried his best. You are Kira, right? I heard that you have something to do with me? Tell me. After seeing the guards bringing Kira in, Leo stopped talking to Renaud and said. That's it, Chief Leo. Kira told him exactly what he knew. What? Jason was assassinated. Where are the others? Where are they now? Has anything happened? Originally, Renaud just listened casually, but when he heard Kira say that Jason had been assassinated, his whole body, he suddenly stood up, and an inexplicable aura spread from his body and filled the entire reception hall. Renaud stared angrily, his face was red, and he was breathing heavily. His whole person looked extremely terrifying, like an angry lion that was about to tear the entire world into pieces. Under the pressure of Renaud's momentum, Kira, who was a senior spiritual warrior, only felt an inexplicable fear in his heart, and he was stammering and speechless. Second brother, calm down. Leo also stood up suddenly, grabbed Renaud who was walking in front of Kira, and asked Kira with a sullen face, How is Jason? Are you okay? Where are the others now? Under Leo's kind questioning, Kira finally took a breath and said tremblingly, Jason is okay, but he was taken back to the Royal City Security Center by the Radigan family. He also said that if you want Jason to go out, let us, the Todd family, go get it. The Radigan family, the Royal City Police Station. Renaud murmured, and a gleam suddenly burst out in his eyes. Brother, I'm going to go first. No matter who wants to hurt my son, I will let him die without a burial place. Renaud said coldly, and then his whole body suddenly jumped into the air, and in an instant, he turned into the stream of light flew quickly towards the direction of the Royal City Security Office. Hey, second brother Leo only had time to stretch out his hand, and Renaud's figure had disappeared into the sky. Someone assassinated Jason? And the Radigan family, huh? Leo's eyes narrowed slightly, and a fierce light flashed from it. It seems that our Todd family has not shown its power for too long, and everyone else has. Our Todd family has been forgotten, but I want to see who dares to assassinate my Todd family. Leo waved his hand and walked out of the hall quickly, leaving Kira alone, staring at Renaud's disappearing back, stunned. Flying in the air, that can only be understood by those who have reached the level of the 7th level Imperial Spiritual Master. The Imperial Spiritual Master, the pinnacle of strength in the kingdom. Kira murmured speechlessly in shock, and his ears I could only hear the roaring instructions of Chief Leo from the distance: gather all family members immediately, put the entire royal city under martial law, and search for suspects. You first come with me to the security station to ask for someone. In the sky, the cold wind blew against Renault's face, making the robe on Renault's body rustle. Looking at the looming public security building on the other side of the royal city, the 7th-level spiritual power in Renault's body was running rapidly, with a gloomy face and a cold light in his eyes. Anxious, extremely anxious, Renault has forgotten how long it has been since he was so anxious. His son Jason was stabbed and was taken back to the police station by the Radigan family, a hostile force of the family. What Jason will face, what it is, Renault, as a child of a big family, knows very clearly. After so many years of bitter dependence, in Renault's heart, although family is important, it is no longer so absolute. The only person who can occupy the most weight in Renault's heart is his only son Jason. If Jason has any shortcomings, no matter who sent the assassin, no matter what powerful background the Radigan family has, I will never give up. Renault was secretly angry in his heart. He was a 6th-level spiritual master back then. He was not timid in the face of the Daos family, one of the 4 major families in the Cairo Empire. Now that he had reached the 7th level of the imperial spiritual master, he had no scruples in his heart at this moment. Anxiously, the 7th-level spiritual power in Renault's body boiled even more. He was already flying at an extremely fast speed, and now he turned into a meteor, streaking across the sky. Under Renault's extremely high speed, within a moment, the gate of the police station was already in sight. At this moment, it is afternoon. The bright sunshine was shining brightly from the sky. At the door of the police station, 2 guards were dozing feebly. It was now the eve of the Oliver Chamber of Commerce's large-scale auction, and the entire royal city was bustling with activity. Many soldiers from the security station were sent out to patrol and perform official duties, but in front of the security station, everything was peaceful. Suddenly, a dark shadow came over them, and the 2 dozing guards were suddenly awakened. They stood up hurriedly and opened their sleepy eyes. Only then did they realize that what appeared in front of them was a middle-aged man wearing very ordinary clothes. "Uncle." The guard was startled and found that the other party did not look like a big shot. After being woken up, he was in a very unhappy mood. He immediately said rudely, "Hey, what do you do? This is the Wangcheng Public Security Station. What's the matter with you?" "It's okay." Before he could finish his words, an extremely powerful hand suddenly grabbed his neck and lifted him up. A voice full of anger and majesty spoke. The guard's ears rang like thunder. "Where is Jason of the Todd family, who was captured by your security before?" This big man was Renault, who had just arrived. The guard who was lifted up by the man struggled hard, but found that no matter how hard he struggled, the man's right hand was motionless and did not move at all. He immediately said in a panic, I don't know. You. What do you want to do? Do you know where this place is?" "Crash into the Royal City Security Center. You don't want to live anymore. Why don't you let me put him down? Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." At this time, another guard, he also came back to his senses, pulled out the long sword from his waist, pointed at Renault, who had captured his companion, and shouted angrily. "Humph." Renault, who didn't get the answer, snorted coldly, threw the guard aside, and walked towards the police station. The guard who was thrown out didn't even have time to hum before he fainted. "You're looking for death." Seeing the appearance of his companion, another guard shouted angrily. The 2nd-level spiritual power in his body circulated rapidly. The long sword in his hand immediately slashed down, creating a shrill scream in the air. Facing Renault's, the head was chopped off hard. "Humph." Renault, who was anxious, didn't even look back, and slapped him with his right hand. The guard only felt a surging force coming towards his face, and the sword in his hand suddenly couldn't be held, and it flew out. Under that huge force, his eyes darkened and he fainted. In the interrogation room, Jason was struggling hard as he was held down by 2 soldiers. These two soldiers were second-level spiritual warriors. How could they hold down the third-level Jason? He was immediately thrown away. Damn, you brat, are you still very energetic? It seems that I hit you too lightly just now. Kelfield smiled ferociously and kicked you again. With a bang, sound, the handcuffs on Jason's right wrist broke immediately, and he flew out heavily and hit the wall behind the interrogation chair. Haha, come again. Kelfield retracted his right leg and kicked him again. Buzz. A strange light flashed from Jason's eyes, and the powerful soul power instantly turned into a powerful spiritual ripple and shot towards Kelpid in front of him. Kelfield, who was attacked by Jason's soul shock, suddenly lost sight of his eyes, and his whole figure instantly stagnated. Kelpid, be careful. Chloe shouted loudly, but she could no longer stop Jason's movements. Hearing the sound of paw, Kelfield came back to his senses instantly, only to see a black shadow flash in front of his eyes, and there was a sharp pain on the left side of his face, and his whole body had been whipped away by Jason. Got out. Kelfield, who got up from the ground, covered his left face. A blood-red 5 fingerprint was deeply engraved on his left face. The left side of his face was still buzzing at this moment. A trace of blood also flowed out of his ears. Trembling all over, Kelfield had a look of disbelief on his face. However, after a moment, this disbelief instantly turned into incomparable resentment. Growing up, Kelfield, as the son of the Batad patriarch of the Radigan family, had suffered a lot, but this was the first time that he had been slapped so hard, even by his own father bastard. State had never treated him like this before. This deep humiliation was even more difficult for him to accept than killing him. I am going to kill you. Kelfield roared, his eyes instantly turned extremely red, and he roared at the guards around him, hit me, beat me hard, if anyone dares not to do it, I will kill him. Just as Chloe next to her was about to say something, she found that Kelfield had looked at him with great anger and roared, Brother Chloe, don't stop me, otherwise we will, from now on, you won't even have to do anything as a brother. If something happens, it won't be your fault. I will take the responsibility. Looking at Kelfield, who was almost in a state of madness, Chloe, who originally wanted to say something, had no choice but to close her mind at this time. Mouth. Bang. At this moment, a faint sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door, and then the iron door of the entire interrogation room was suddenly hit hard and kicked open with a huge sound. After the twisted iron door collapsed, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes stood at the door of the interrogation room like a javelin. His cold eyes were like a magic weapon drawing a sword out of its sheath, exuding a sharp light. He stared coldly at the group of people in the interrogation room. In his right hand, he was holding a soldier wearing the armor of the Public Security Bureau, slumped there like a pile of mud, without any resistance. When the middle-aged man's eyes fell on Jason in the interrogation room, his breathing suddenly intensified. Jason, who appeared in front of Renaud, looked particularly embarrassed at this moment. After being assassinated in the alley, the robe Jason wore had been torn to pieces in the battle. Although the many wounds on his body had been completely healed under the treatment of the strange power, the blood that had been spat out before and the injuries from the assassin, the blood splashed on Jason's body was now dry, which was particularly dazzling. At first glance, Jason's body was extremely dirty, with torn clothes hanging there, and dark brown blood stains everywhere on his body. Especially on Jason's chest, there were many footprints and handcuffed hands. It was also stained with blood. Inexplicably, an indescribable heartache surged up from the bottom of Renaud's heart. For a moment, Renaud, a 7th-level Imperial spiritual master, felt like crying. Anger, incomparable anger, looking at everyone in the interrogation room, the flame of anger was burning in Renaud's heart. Who are you? You dare to break into the Royal City Security Center. Don't you want to live? Looking at Renaud, who suddenly broke in, Kelfield roared immediately, with a hint of arrogance in his eyes. As a member of the Radigan family, the son of the Batad patriarch, he is indeed proud. Ignoring the clamoring Kelpid, Renaud threw the soldier he had grabbed to guide him to the ground with a bang, and walked towards Jason. Taking advantage of Renault's powerful aura, everyone along the way backed down, including Kelpid and Chloe. "Jason, father is late." Renault's tone was trembling, tears glistening in his eyes, and he gently pinched the handcuffs on Jason's left wrist with his scissors with his right hand. There was just a click, and the stainless steel handcuffs on Jason's wrists broke immediately under the pinch of Renault's fingers. After hearing Renault's words, the angry Kelfield couldn't help but sneered, "So you are this boy's father, very good, very good. This young master is the son of the Bautad patriarch of the Radigan family. Your son Jason, you committed a murder openly in the royal city, and you resisted arrest earlier and injured this young master. I tell you, your son is definitely dead this time." Kelfield looked extremely arrogant, and it is no wonder that he is like this. Today's law, the Tegan family and the Todd family have their own merits in the Kingdom of Orlando. Jason is just a sideline of the Todd family, but he is the son of the patriarch and the eldest son of the Radigan family. His status is naturally clear at a glance. Kelfield, who was in anger, spoke without thinking at all and was extremely arrogant. Renault stood up slowly, turned around, his eyes fell on Kelfield, looking extremely calm, and said calmly, "I heard someone just now saying that they wanted to kill my son. That person should be you, right?" Jason, who was familiar with Renault, saw his father's calm tone and knew in his heart that his father had real murderous intentions this time. "Damn it, it's me. Don't talk about your son, you old guy dares to break into the police station privately, you should wait to prepare for the funeral." At this moment, Kelfield was still in the anger of being slapped by Jason. The tone was extremely bad. Chloe on the side felt something was wrong. Previously, Renault easily used his fingers to remove the handcuffs on Jason's hand. Although the handcuffs had cracked during Jason's previous struggle, they were used to cuff spirits after all. The strength of the Master's special handcuffs can be seen from the fact that Jason was unable to break free after struggling for so long. However, they were cut open by the middle-aged man. What kind of strength does this middle-aged man have? Very good. Renault didn't say anything more, just nodded. Suddenly a phantom suddenly flashed in the air, and with a pop, Renault slapped the right face of Kelfield, who was in front of him, with a heavy slap, and severely hit Kelfield's whole body. It flew out, hit the wall on one side, and then fell heavily to the ground. This blow was even more severe than Jason's previous blow. Kelfield spit out 2 bloody teeth from his mouth as he fell to the ground. The entire right side of his face quickly became congested and swollen, and he looked a little dazed. "Master." "Kelfield." The 2 guards on the side and Chloe couldn't help but exclaimed after seeing Kelfield being beaten. The 2 guards even turned around and pounced on him fiercely. Renault was standing there. If something happened to Kelfield, the 2 of them would never have a good life. Pop. 2 crisp blows came. Before everyone could react, the 2 guards who were previously vigorous were already vomiting blood and fell to the side with wide eyes. The wounds on their chests, a dark blood hole appeared in the heart area, and blood sprayed out from it, splashing far away. Chloe's eyes widened. He knew clearly that the 2 guards of Kelfield were real 3rd-level senior spiritual masters. However, under the middle-aged man, he couldn't even make a single move. Even if they didn't survive, they were all killed on the spot. What kind of strength is this? Stop him. In fear, Chloe roared, picked up Kelfield, who fell on the ground, and rushed out of the interrogation room. Facing such a powerful guy, he and Kelfield are both 3rd-level advanced spiritual masters. If they fight, the end will definitely not be any better than that of the 2 guards. The only solution now is to go to the police station. Only the second Uncle Eastman, who is a 5th-level senior sect spiritual master, will have a glimmer of hope. Several soldiers in the interrogation room immediately roared angrily, drew out the long swords from their waists, and struck hard at Renault. Even the 2 soldiers from the public security station who were supporting Wayne left Wayne behind and rushed forward. For a moment, the entire interrogation room was filled with cold murderous intent. Although these soldiers from the public security station were only at the level of spiritual warriors, when they gathered together to attack together, they were quite powerful and powerful. Huh! Suddenly a strong wind suddenly flashed through the interrogation room. The interrogation room, which had been roaring with wind and flashing sword light, was silent for a moment, and then only the sound of jingling bells could be heard. The weapons in the hands of the security station soldiers, all the long swords, fell to the ground, and they all covered their wrists and wailed. Want to escape? A sneer appeared on the corner of Renault's mouth, and he made a palm with his right hand and slashed forward. An incomparably awe-inspiring ray of light burst out from the palm of Renault's right hand, hitting the wall of the interrogation room heavily. With a bang, a large hole suddenly appeared in the wall of the police station made of concrete and iron plates. Two thumps were heard, and a shrill wailing sound came from the corridor on the opposite side of the wall. Chloe and Kelfield were rolling in pain in the corridor. Their entire calves had already become a pile of minced flesh under the bombardment of the spiritual sword light released by Renault earlier. Wayne stood up unsteadily. Some of the previous conversations between Kelfield and Jason had made Wayne understand his situation. Now, after seeing Renault appear, his face showed an extremely relaxed look. With Renault's strength, a 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Master is enough to dominate the entire kingdom of Orlando. No, don't kill me. I am the son of the Batad Patriarch of the Radigan family. You can't kill me, otherwise my father will definitely not let you go. Looking at the approaching Renault and the other three, Kelfield fell to the ground and moaned in pain, his eyes filled with fear. If you want to deal with my son, you must be prepared to die. Renault said calmly and slowly raised his right hand. No, no, help, please, don't kill me. Kelfield suddenly started struggling violently. Stop. At this moment, a loud roar suddenly came from the distance, and a figure quickly swept over from the distance, followed closely by densely packed security station soldiers, hundreds of them, armed with weapons, surrounded Renault and others in the corridor. The person coming is none other than the director of the Public Security Bureau, a 5th-level senior spiritual master, and Count Eastman of the Radigan family. Who are you? You dare to break into the security center of our royal city and hurt people at will. Do you still have the law in your eyes? Earl Eastman, who rushed after receiving the news, looked at the messy interrogation room in front of him, as well as Kelfield and Chloe, who were lying on the ground in a panic, with their entire calves completely reduced to a puddle of minced meat. Their eyes were full of anger, and they shouted sharply at Renault. Kelfield and Chloe went to the interrogation room to teach Jason of the Todd family. Earl Eastman acquiesced. In his opinion, as long as no lives were lost, the Todd family would be the one to take over. Feel free to humiliate me, by the way, such a small thing is not worth the fuss at all. However, he had been resting well in the office before, but he was suddenly awakened by two security station soldiers who rushed into the office in a hurry. In the report of the two soldiers, they said that a middle-aged man broke into the security station. After asking where the newly captured Jason was, he rushed to the interrogation room without asking any questions and injured several soldiers who tried to stop him. This made Earl Eastman very angry. The Todd family really didn't understand the rules. Although there were often conflicts between the two families, for the sake of a small collateral descendant, the Todd family, he actually sent people to rush into the police station and injured several of his men. This was too arrogant, and he did not take the director of the police station seriously. After receiving the news, Earl Eastman rushed over with a large number of his men. From a distance, he heard Kelfield's wailing. After seeing the miserable appearance of Kelfield and Chloe lying there, Count Eastman was even more furious. Especially when he saw that the middle-aged man who came to take Jason away seemed to want to kill Kelfield, Eastman was even more angry. Who was Kelfield? He was the son of the current Batad Patriarch and the apple of the Radigan family's eye. If anything happened to him in this security station, the entire royal city would be shaken. Seeing Count Eastman arriving, Kelfield, who had narrowly escaped death, immediately started wailing with runny nose, "Uncle Eastman, save me, kill them all quickly, save me. Get out." Kelfield wailed as he crawled toward Count Eastman on his hands and knees, looking extremely embarrassed. "Who am I?" "Humph, you don't deserve to know. If this person dares to hurt my son, I will take his life. If you just stop me, I will take your life too." Renaud looked at him coldly. Eastman in front of him said calmly, as if in his eyes, Eastman was just like an ant, not worth mentioning at all. "You have such a strong tone." Eastman also had a sneer on his face. "Do you know who he is? He is the son of the bastard patriarch of the Radigan family. If he has any shortcomings, you are waiting to face him. The Radigan family's never-ending anger, in this kingdom of Orlando, no one can protect you by then." Ha ha ha. Renaud's heroic laughter rumbled in the police station, and his cold eyes were glaring with electricity. The light of the light shocked all the police officers present with cold sweat on their hands. "I don't care who he is. If he dares to hurt my son, even if he is the king of heaven, I will take his life." Amid the sneer, Renaud's right hand, "Turn it up, face Kelfield in front of you, and chop it down with a palm." "Seeking death?" Eastman shouted angrily, and the long sword at his waist suddenly unsheathed. A dazzling light lit up in the dark corridor. The sound of the dragon's roar lingering in the air for a long time, and the sharp sword energy crisscrossed the air, making it clear that the sword in Eastman's hand is absolutely extraordinary. Amidst the roar, Eastman stood up and shot toward Renaud like lightning. He slashed with the long sword in midair. Several huge chains were like surging pythons, tearing open the air in front of him. He slashed at Renaud, who was standing there. At the same time, countless soldiers in the security station also waved their weapons and rushed forward. When they rushed forward, some of the people in the police station aimed their weapons at Renaud, who was standing at the front, while others ran towards Kelfield and Chloe. Thinking about it in the minds of these people, Director Eastman, who is a 5th-level senior sect spiritual master, can definitely kill the 3 rioters instantly. There is no suspense. If he follows the attack, it will be of no use. On the contrary, if when the time comes, I will be able to protect Master Kelfield and Master Chloe, and when the time comes, I will leave a good impression in front of Master Kelfield and Master Chloe, and climb up the big tree of the Radigan family. Are you afraid that you won't be able to enjoy spicy food in the future? Everyone had their own thoughts in mind, fearing that they would fall behind others and not be able to show their faces when the time came, so they all ran forward desperately. However, those at the front were some officials from the public security station. The captains were top-notch, and most of them were 4th-level officers. The Heavenly Spiritual Master and the 3rd-level Senior Spiritual Master. For a time, the whole corridor of the public security station was filled with sword energy, spiritual power, and a surging momentum, which was spectacular. Humph. Looking coldly at the surging crowd, Renaud's face exuded a sneer, and he didn't see any movement. An extremely surging spiritual power suddenly radiated from all parts of Renaud's body, like a wave, generally rushing towards the surrounding areas. Boom! Under the impact of Renaud's spiritual power, the sword rays released by Eastman suddenly exploded in midair. Countless spiritual sword rays scattered in all directions, hitting the surrounding walls and bombarding them. Numerous large and small holes appeared, and for a while, a large number of hard stone fragments were splashed everywhere in the corridor. It was so powerful that it would turn a bloody hole into a person's body. Then Renaud raised his head and waved lightly at Eastman, who was flying through the air like lightning. There was a sound of bang, and Eastman, who was flying in midair, seemed to have been hit head-on by a large container truck. He let out a wailing sound, and spurted blood from his mouth, moving faster than before. The speed fell back and hit the ground hard. The soldiers at the forefront of the security station felt like boats in a tsunami under the impact of Renaud's spiritual power. They fell backwards and fell to the ground, their swords flying in all directions, and howling in their mouths. When the soldiers from the public security station who were running behind and were not affected saw this situation, they all stopped suddenly and looked at the people standing there with frightened eyes. Renault never dared to move forward. How is that possible? Eastman, who was hit hard, struggled to support his body and looked at Renault with disbelief in his eyes. Who is this guy? I am a 5th-level senior spiritual master. When I took the lead, I didn't even block the opponent's move. How is this possible? Could I be dreaming? Eastman he touched his face in disbelief, feeling the immense pain in his chest and the blood in his mouth, which was hard to accept. Who is this guy? When did such a person appear in the Todd family? Why have I never seen him before? Kelfield and Crow were ecstatic to see the rescuers. The two of them were completely dumbfounded at this time. Everything that happened before made everyone present except Jason and Wayne suddenly confused. Who is Eastman? The director of the Royal City Public Security Station, a 5th-level senior spiritual master. Such a person is usually the #1 master in a city under the kingdom. Even in the royal city where there are so many masters, it is definitely not something that can be picked out casually. Characters. But for such a powerful figure, the inconspicuous middle-aged man was seriously injured on the spot with a casual swipe, and he was vomiting blood. Good boy. What kind of strength is this? All the soldiers in the public security station were filled with fear at this moment. As for the power of Director Eastman, all of them who were present as members of the Public Security Bureau knew very well. Therefore, when Eastman took action in anger, everyone thought that the matter would be resolved like this. However, in the end, it was beyond their expectation. Lord Eastman is in existence at the pinnacle level of senior sect spiritual master. I heard that promotion to the 6th level of spiritual master is a sure thing. If he can seriously injure Lord Eastman later, the opponent must be at least an intermediate spiritual master. All the soldiers from the public security station present were stunned at this moment. After glaring at each other, they all took 2 steps back without leaving any trace. It's good to step forward and show your face in front of Lord Eastman and Master Kelfield for the sake of your future, but if you even lose your life, what does it need to do with this future? These soldiers at the public security station are all old-fashioned, and they are all shrewd in their hearts. It is better for mortals like me to give in to this fight between gods. If it is really affected, it will be a death sentence. Go up to whoever you love. Senior, please be lenient and merciful. Please don't kill my nephew. If you have done anything wrong, I will apologize to you here. Eastman held back the pain and held on. He stood up and shouted to Renault. At this time Eastman can no longer care so much. He will save Kelfield first. As for this revenge, it will not be too late to wait until he returns to the family. He rushed into the Royal City Security Center so arrogantly and took people away. He also injured so many security guards. Even himself and Kelfield were seriously injured. The guys from the Todd family not only beat up the Radigan family. It also dealt a heavy blow to the kingdom's face. He, Eastman, still didn't believe that His Majesty Leasant, who wanted to suppress the Todd family, would protect the Todd family. You have to be merciful and merciful? Renault sneered and walked slowly towards Kelfield, who had a frightened face in front of him. No, don't come over, Uncle Eastman, save me quickly, save me quickly. Seeing that even Eastman was seriously injured by the middle-aged man, Kelfield's fear finally disappeared. The suppressed burst out, looking at the approaching Renault with a horrified face, and struggling to back away. You can't kill him, you can't kill him. He is the son of the bastard chief. If you kill him, our Radigan family will never let you go. Eastman roared, trying to stop Renault. Action. Although Renault had previously shown extremely strong strength, in Eastman's heart, he still believed that Renault should be a 6th-level spiritual master, and did not think of him as a 7th-level imperial spiritual master. After all, the 7th-level imperial spiritual master is too shocking and too rare. Even in the entire kingdom of Orlando, the only officially announced 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Master is the number 1 Master in the Kingdom and the first Spiritual Master in the Palace. He is just the commander of Emperor Lin, who is a 7th-level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master. However, in the face of Eastman's clamor, Renault ignored it. He came to Kelfield and smiled at Kelfield, who was lying on the ground and was struggling. He was about to kill Kelfield, only to find that his right hand was grabbed by Jason behind him. Jason? Renault turned his head, with a hint of doubt in his tone. Jason shook his head, walked up to Kelfield, and said calmly to everyone present, "I, Jason, have a clear grudge and I will not take advantage of you. You gave me a few kicks before, and I will pay you back. Kick, if you don't die then, you'll be lucky." After that, Jason kicked Kelfield hard on the chest. Bang! The dull sound of the blow spread far away in the corridor. Kelfield's body lying on the ground shook violently, a sharp pain came, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Bang! Another kick, and Kelfield's body couldn't help but twitch. Severe pain instantly spread to his whole body. However, Kelfield's heart was extremely excited at this moment. It was a kind of calamity. The joy of the rest of life. As a 3rd-level senior spiritual master, Kelfield could feel that with the intensity with which Jason was kicking him now, he would never die even if he kicked him more than a dozen times. However, the previous kick he had made to Jason was not possible at all. Even if you are not satisfied with 10 blows, as long as you are alive, there is still a chance for everything, and there is still a chance to avenge this revenge. A flame of revenge and the joy of surviving the disaster spread rapidly in Kelfield's heart. In front of everyone, Jason kicked Kelfield's chest one after another. Suddenly there was a click, and a crisp cracking sound came from Kelfield's sternum. He coughed up a lot of blood again. "Come on, come on!" Kelfield roared in his heart, "As long as I live, as long as I don't die, I will never let you go. Jason, wait for me, wait until I get back, I will let my father kill you. I will cut you into pieces to satisfy the hatred in my heart. I will feed your body to the dogs." Kelfield was full of resentment towards Jason. But there was no expression on his face. Bang! Finally, with the last blow, Jason withdrew his right foot, with a hint of regret in his tone. "Kelfield, you kicked me 8 times in total before, and I returned them all to you. I didn't expect you to die. It's so hard, it's not dead yet." After hearing Jason's words, Reno on the side couldn't help but shook his head slightly. Jason was too young and too naive. If the tiger returns to the mountains and leaves trouble, he will be killed by the tiger sooner or later. But since Jason has said that before, as a father, he can't say anything now. He can only secretly find an opportunity next time to kill that kid to avoid future troubles. At this moment, Wayne was shaking his head secretly, feeling that Jason was too soft-hearted. Not only Reno and Wayne, but also Eastman and many police station soldiers who were present. They were sophisticated and felt that Jason was too naive. Of course, they hoped that Jason would be as naive as possible. Haha. After seeing Jason's announcement, Kelfield, who had narrowly escaped death, had an ugly smile on his face. At this moment, he was already thinking about how he would kill Jason. Oh, right. Just when Jason turned his head and walked back, Jason seemed to suddenly think of something and stopped again. "Kelpid, in addition to kicking me 8 times, you also punched my guard twice. I'm going to retaliate for my guard with 2 punches and 1 kick," Jason said to Kelpid. He showed a harmless smile. Let me let you be proud now. After a while, every time you hit me, I will pay it back 10 times and 100 times. I will make you die a bad death." Kelfield held in his breath and waited. Following Jason's last kick, he was even more viciously thinking about how he would torture Jason later to relieve his anger. No one noticed that this time, when Jason gave the last kick, a subtle light quietly passed through the gravity pendant on his left hand. 100 times gravity. Jason suddenly lifted his leg, and the spiritual power in his body suddenly exploded. He used all his strength to step on Kelpid on the ground.